When you step back and look at the complete story of Metallica, you have to ask yourself a difficult question. Was it worth it? These four young men from California achieved absolutely everything they had dreamed of when they started jamming together in that garage. They became the biggest and most influential metal band in history. They sold over 125 million albums worldwide. They made hundreds of millions of dollars. They influenced entire generations of musicians and fans. But what was the true cost of that incredible success? Cliff Burton died at just 24 years old, right as he was reaching his artistic peak. The world lost a genuinely innovative musician who might have continued pushing the boundaries of what bass guitar could accomplish in rock music. His death traumatized his bandmates and set off a chain of destructive behavior that lasted for decades. James Hetfield nearly drank himself to death and lost entire years of his life to alcohol-induced blackouts. He missed precious time with his family. He damaged his voice permanently. He admits he can't remember recording entire albums or playing countless concerts during his worst periods of addiction. Jason Newsted endured over 14 years of systematic emotional abuse from his own bandmates. He was excluded from creative decisions, had his contributions minimized, and was never allowed to feel like a full member of the band he helped carry to even greater success. The friendships that had started with such pure enthusiasm in that California garage were damaged, perhaps permanently. The simple joy of creating music together was gradually replaced by business meetings, legal disputes, and therapy sessions. Their story forces us to think seriously about what success really means and what we're willing to sacrifice to achieve our biggest dreams. Is fame worth destroying your health? Is fortune worth losing your closest friendships? Is artistic achievement worth the death of people you love? Metallica would probably tell you that yes, it was all worth it. They lived their dream completely, even when that dream occasionally became a nightmare. They created music that will outlive all of them and continue inspiring people for generations to come. But their story also reveals something important about the nature of human ambition and the price of fame. Behind every great success, there are real people dealing with real problems, real pain, and real consequences. The musicians we put on pedestals and treat like gods are just the dark side of Metallica's rise to fame. Exposed, they sold over 125 million albums. They filled stadiums around the world. For decades, Metallica ruled as the kings of heavy metal. But behind the thundering guitars and screaming crowds was a much darker story. A story of addiction that nearly killed the lead singer, of a tragic death that almost ended the band forever, of friendships destroyed by ego and greed. This is the real story of Metallica's rise to fame. And it's not pretty. Four young men from California had a dream. They wanted to be the loudest, fastest, heaviest band on earth. They got their wish, but the price they paid was higher than any of them imagined. James Hetfield never had it easy. His father walked out when James was just 13 years old, left behind a family struggling to get by. James turned to music to deal with the pain and anger. His mother was deeply religious. She forbade him from listening to rock music. So James did what any teenager would do. He rebelled. He discovered Black Sabbath and Led Zeppelin. The heavier, the better. Meanwhile, across town, Lars Ulrich had the opposite problem. His parents had money. His father wanted him to be a tennis player like him. Lars was good at tennis, really good, but his heart wasn't in it. One day, Lars heard a band called Diamond Head. That was it. He traded his tennis racket for drumsticks. His parents thought he was crazy. They were probably right. James and Lars met through a newspaper ad. Lars had placed an ad looking for other musicians. James answered. They started jamming in Lars's garage. They had no money. James slept on floors. They ate whatever they could find. Their first shows were disasters. Sometimes only 5 people showed up. Sometimes those 5 people left halfway through. Record labels wouldn't even listen to their demos. They said the music was too fast, too angry, too weird. Then everything changed when they met Cliff Burton. Cliff was a bass player from San Francisco. He was classically trained. He could make his bass sound like a guitar, like an orchestra, like thunder. The first time James and Lars heard him play, they knew they needed him. But Cliff had one condition. The band had to move to San Francisco if they wanted him. So they packed up everything they owned, which wasn't much, and moved to the Bay Area. They lived in a house with no heat. They practiced in a garage with no windows. They ate beans and rice for weeks at a time, but they were getting better, much better. In 1983, everything started to change. A small record label called Megaforce Records took a chance on them. They recorded their first album, Kill 'Em All, for just $15,000. The album was like nothing anyone had heard before. It was faster than punk rock, heavier than Black Sabbath, angrier than anything on the radio. They called it thrash metal. Radio stations wouldn't play it. MTV wouldn't show their videos. But something amazing happened. Fans started spreading the word themselves. In the days before the internet, metal fans traded cassette tapes. They made copies for their friends. They passed them around at concerts. Soon, Metallica tapes were everywhere. The underground metal scene exploded. Kids who felt angry and left out finally had music that spoke to them. Metallica showed them it was okay to be different. It was okay to be mad. Their concerts grew from small clubs to bigger venues. Opening acts became headlining shows. The audiences got louder and more intense. Music critics started paying attention too. Rolling Stone called them the future of heavy metal. Metal Hammer said they were changing the rules of rock. But this was just the beginning. By 1986, Metallica had reached the top of the metal world. Their third album, Master of Puppets, was a masterpiece. Every song was perfect. The guitar work was incredible. The lyrics dealt with serious topics like war, drugs, and control. Critics called it the greatest metal album ever made. Fans agreed. It shot to number 29 on the Billboard charts without any radio play or MTV support. That was unheard of for a metal band. They were selling out arenas across America and Europe. Crowds of 50,000 people sang every word. The energy at their shows was electric, dangerous even. Fans threw themselves into mosh pits. They crowd surfed. They screamed until their voices gave out. James had become a master frontman. His voice could go from a whisper to a roar. His rhythm guitar playing was crushing. Lars's drumming drove the songs like a machine gun. Cliff's bass lines were works of art. Metal was becoming mainstream, and Metallica was leading the charge. They proved that heavy music could be smart, technical, and emotional. They weren't just noise, they were artists. Magazines put them on covers. Other musicians wanted to work with them. They were making real money for the first time in their lives. Everything was perfect. They were young, talented, and on top of the world. Then, tragedy struck. September 27, 1986. The band was touring Europe, promoting Master of Puppets. They were in Sweden, traveling between shows on their tour bus. Around 6:30 in the morning, the bus hit a patch of ice on the highway. It skidded off the road and flipped over. The bus rolled several times before coming to a stop. James, Lars, and their guitar player Kirk Hammett crawled out with cuts and bruises. But Cliff Burton was nowhere to be found. They found him under the bus. He was 24 years old. James was devastated. He blamed himself. He blamed the bus driver. He blamed God. The pain was unbearable, so he did what he always did. When he hurt, he drank. James had been drinking heavily since his teenage years. After Cliff's death, it got much worse. He would drink a bottle of vodka before shows. He would black out and not remember entire concerts. The band almost broke up. How could they continue without Cliff? Some days, James didn't want to get out of bed. Lars was angry all the time. They fought constantly. But they decided Cliff would have wanted them to keep going. So they found a new bass player, Jason Newsted, from a band called Flotsam and Jetsam. Jason was talented and eager to join, but James and Lars made his life miserable. They called it hazing, but it was really bullying. They excluded him from songwriting. They turned his bass down during concerts. They treated him like an outsider for years. James's drinking kept getting worse. He would show up to recording sessions drunk. He would forget lyrics on stage. The other band members were worried he might die. Meanwhile, success was changing them. They were making millions of dollars. They had houses, cars, fame, but they weren't happy. The more successful they became, the more they fought with each other. In 1991, Metallica shocked everyone. Their new album, called Metallica, but known as the Black Album, was completely different. Gone were the long, complex songs. Gone were the lightning-fast guitar solos. Instead, they wrote shorter, simpler songs that radio would actually play. The album was a massive success. It sold over 16 million copies in America alone. Songs like Enter Sandman and Nothing Else Matters became huge hits, but longtime fans felt betrayed. They said Metallica had sold out. They accused the band of caring more about money than music. Then came an even bigger shock. In 1996, James and Lars cut off their long hair. For metal fans, this was like a sacred cow being slaughtered. Hair metal was supposed to mean long hair, always. The backlash was intense. Fans burned their albums. They called the band Metallica, a play on their name suggesting they were sellouts. But the worst was yet to come. In 2000, Metallica sued Napster, the file-sharing service. They said people downloading their music for free was stealing. Lars even read out the names of individual fans who had downloaded their songs illegally. Young fans were furious. Here was a band that got famous through underground tape trading, now trying to stop people from sharing music. They called Metallica hypocrites and greedy old men. The band's image took another hit with 2003's Saint Anger album. It was experimental and weird. The drums sounded like garbage cans. There were no guitar solos. Fans and critics hated it. Around this time, the band agreed to be filmed for a documentary while they were in therapy. Yes, therapy. These tough metal guys were sitting in group sessions talking about their feelings. The movie, called Some Kind of Monster, showed how dysfunctional they had become. They couldn't write songs together. They could barely be in the same room. James was in rehab for alcoholism. Jason was quitting the band. It was embarrassing and sad to watch. Jason Newsted finally had enough in 2001. After 14 years of being treated like a second-class member, he quit. He said the constant negativity and exclusion had worn him down. "I was sick of being treated like I didn't matter," Jason said in interviews. After Cliff died, they never let anyone else really into the band. James's alcoholism had reached a breaking point. In 2001, he entered rehab for alcohol and other addictions. He was gone for 7 months. The other band members didn't know if he would come back. When James returned, he was different, sober, but also more controlling. He insisted the band could only work 4 hours a day, 4 days a week. This frustrated Lars and Kirk, who wanted to work more. They eventually found a new bass player, Robert Trujillo, who fit in better than Jason ever had. But by then, they were all middle-aged men. The fire of their youth was gone. Today, the members of Metallica are in their 60s. They still tour, but James's voice isn't what it used to be. Lars's drumming has slowed down. They play their old hits because that's what people want to hear. James is still sober, which is probably why he's still alive. But decades of heavy drinking damaged his voice and his health. He's admitted he doesn't remember large parts of the 1990s. In recent interviews, they seem tired. The passion that once drove them to create masterpieces like Master of Puppets has been replaced by the routine of being a business. Young metal fans today often discover other bands first. Metallica is respected, but they're not dangerous anymore. They're not hungry. They're rich old guys, playing their greatest hits. Despite everything, Metallica's impact on music cannot be denied. They didn't just play heavy metal. They created an entirely new style called thrash metal. Bands like Megadeth, Slayer, and Anthrax followed in their footsteps. Without Metallica, there would be no Pantera, no Tool, no modern metal at all. Dave Mustaine, who was kicked out of Metallica before they became famous and went on to form Megadeth, said, "I hate to admit it, but they changed everything. They proved metal could be technical and popular at the same time." Ozzy Osbourne called them the greatest metal band of their generation. Tony Iommi from Black Sabbath said they took what we started and made it bigger than we ever imagined. They brought heavy metal into the mainstream. Before Metallica, metal was underground music for outcasts. After them, metal bands could sell millions of albums and fill stadiums. But their influence goes beyond music. They changed how the music industry works. They were one of the first bands to control their own image and business decisions. They proved bands didn't need record labels to be successful. They also showed the dark side of success. Their story is a cautionary tale about what happens when fame and money replace passion and friendship. Many musicians have spoken about learning from Metallica's mistakes, knowing when to say no to drugs and alcohol, remembering to treat bandmates with respect, not letting success go to their heads. Metallica got everything they dreamed of as young men. They became the biggest metal band in the world. They made millions of dollars. They influenced generations of musicians. But what did it cost them? Cliff Burton died at 24, just as he was reaching his peak. James nearly drank himself to death and lost years of his life to blackouts. Jason endured over a decade of emotional abuse from his bandmates. The friendships that started in that garage in California were damaged, maybe forever. The pure joy of making music together was replaced by business meetings and therapy sessions. Their story makes you think about success and what it really means. Is it worth sacrificing your health, your relationships, and your happiness to become famous? Behind every great success, there are real people dealing with real problems. The musicians we put on pedestals are just human beings, with all the flaws that come with being human. The next time you hear their music, remember the price that was paid to create those songs. Remember Cliff Burton, who died too young. Remember James Hetfield fighting his demons every day. Maybe that's the real dark side of Metallica's rise to fame. They achieved everything they wanted, but they lost parts of themselves in the process. The question each of us has to ask is, what are we willing to sacrifice for our dreams? And more importantly, will it be worth it in the end? The story of Metallica's rise to fame reads like a dark cautionary tale about the price of success in the music industry. What began as four young men from California chasing their dream of creating the heaviest, fastest metal music possible eventually became a saga filled with tragedy, addiction, and broken relationships that allegedly tore apart lifelong friendships. According to various industry sources and former associates, James Hetfield's childhood was marked by abandonment when his father left the family, driving him toward music as an escape, and reportedly toward alcohol as a coping mechanism from an early age. Lars Ulrich, coming from a wealthy tennis-playing family, supposedly shocked his parents by trading his promising sports career for drumsticks and dreams of metal stardom. The band's early years were allegedly marked by extreme poverty, with members sleeping on floors and surviving on beans and rice while playing to nearly empty clubs that sometimes saw audience members walk out mid-performance. Industry insiders claimed that their breakthrough came when Cliff Burton, a classically trained bassist, joined the group but demanded they relocate to San Francisco, forcing the struggling musicians to start over in a new city. Their 1983 debut, Kill 'Em All, reportedly faced complete rejection from mainstream radio and MTV, but underground metal fans allegedly spread the music through an informal network of cassette tape trading that predated the internet. By 1986, rumors suggest they had reached their creative and commercial peak with Master of Puppets, selling out massive arenas and earning critical acclaim as the greatest metal album ever recorded. However, tragedy allegedly struck during their European tour when their bus crashed on a Swedish highway, killing Cliff Burton at age 24 in what some sources describe as a preventable accident involving black ice and an inexperienced driver. James Hetfield's drinking problem supposedly escalated dramatically after Burton's death, with various accounts claiming he would consume entire bottles of vodka before performances and blackout during concerts. The band's treatment of replacement bassist Jason Newsted has been the subject of numerous allegations over the years, with former associates claiming systematic emotional abuse, exclusion from songwriting, and deliberate attempts to make him feel unwelcome that lasted over a decade. Their 1991 Black Album success allegedly came at the cost of alienating their core fan base, who accused them of selling out their thrash metal roots for mainstream radio play and commercial success. The controversial decision to cut their trademark long hair in 1996 reportedly sent shockwaves through the metal community, with some fans treating it as a symbolic betrayal of everything heavy metal represented. The Napster lawsuit in 2000 allegedly damaged their reputation among younger fans, who saw them as hypocritical millionaires trying to prevent music sharing, despite their own success coming partly through underground tape trading. Industry sources suggest the 2003 Saint Anger album marked their creative low point, with even loyal fans reportedly unable to defend the experimental sound and lack of guitar solos. The Some Kind of Monster documentary allegedly revealed the extent of their dysfunction, showing the band in therapy sessions and James entering rehab for alcoholism, while Jason finally quit after years of mistreatment. Today, various reports suggest the band members, now in their 60s, continue touring primarily as a business venture rather than an artistic mission, with James's voice reportedly damaged by decades of abuse and the group's creative fire largely extinguished. Despite these alleged personal costs, music industry experts generally agree that Metallica's influence on heavy metal and popular culture remains undeniable, having created the thrash metal genre and paved the way for countless bands while bringing extreme music into the mainstream. Their story, whether fully accurate or partially based on rumors and speculation, serves as a compelling example of how the pursuit of fame and success can allegedly exact a devastating toll on personal relationships, mental health, and artistic integrity, leaving observers to question whether achieving one's ultimate dreams is worth the potential destruction of everything else that matters in life.